So the idea for having common standards has been around for a long time, and it just hasn't been successful. And so they wanted to develop a plan that would be successful. And so the way they thought that they would do that is by getting the appearance that all of the states were on board and that this was led by the states. But the actual people that wrote the standards were not from individual states. The main English language arts writer was David Coleman. There was others involved in writing some of the math standards. But they went to Bill Gates and asked for funding to get this process rolling. And Bill Gates came on board and was kind of the funds and the impetus behind funding this project. And then they went to groups like the Chief State School Officers and the National Governors Association, and then they got them on board, which gave the appearance that the states came up with the idea when it was absolutely the other way around. These private entities went to them and said, hey, we've got this idea, we need you on board. So actually writing the standards, you'll hear Tom Luna talk about 150 Idaho teachers that were involved. When you actually look at the lists that were published of the people that were able to comment and different things, these guys came on way after the fact. The standards were all written, and then there were a few people in Idaho that were able to comment. But people on the validation committee, Sandra Stotsky in particular, she has asked for the documentation of how these comments were used and how the comments impacted the standards, and if any of the standards were changed after the fact, after the different states looked at them and the teachers had a chance to comment, and that is not provided. So we have no idea if these teachers in Idaho that supposedly had input on the standards actually had any impact at all on the standards as they exist. So it wasn't a process, a collaborative process where all the states gave comment, and then we all worked together, and then the state, people here in our state decided, yes, these standards are good and this is why. It wasn't that type of process at all. It was all done behind closed doors with private organizations that are not subject to sunshine laws. And so to the idea that this was a state-led, that Tom Luna likes to say that he was in the room, it's absolutely false that we had any input locally in Idaho in dictating the direction of these standards.
And then did you want to address that article?
Yes, this article it's a really good one to read, how Bill Gates pulled off the swift Common Core revolution. It talks about how his money was used in every step of the way, even financing a group that worked together, that brought other organizations from both political sides of the spectrum. And they had weekly conference calls, and they would decide, how are we going to sell this? How are we going to sell it to the states? They even would address, which states are having problems, who do we need to send to address their legislature. They came up with a toolkit. They hired a communications firm to kind of message the Common Core so that they could sell it effectively in all of the states. Again, if this were a state-led effort and this was happening on the ground in the states, none of this would have been necessary.